Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Shamus.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Did you miss me?
Aren't you drinking? I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. Another week, seemingly another set of rumors or mini rumors, or it's just, I feel like this crazy aspect of the season has started a little bit sooner rather than later, because it's just, I don't remember this much stuff coming out late February, early March, but a lot of this stuff is just from the insiders that we trust. Even they post that, I mean, it is rumor season, take everything with a grain of salt, and they aren't really sure what side is up, because there's just a lot going on, which makes for a really fun speculation season. Because I like knowing some stuff, but the surprise is what really gets me going. So we're going to touch on a couple of these recent rumors that have come out. And we are also going to be discussing the speculation map from Horror Night Nightmares for Hollywood, an event we don't necessarily always cover because we just have not gone out there to visit, but we have that speculation map and we might as well talk about it because there's some interesting stuff on there. So that's what we got for this week's episode. And then as far as beers go, I currently do not have anything. I just got back from a giant dinner. I am way too full. I ate too much crap and I just want to relax. So thankfully I didn't post my picture of the beer from last week. So I'm just going to post that this week.
Just pretend you're drinking that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Because unfortunately, when we're remote, you can kind of just assume I'm drinking a NFL friendly macro light beer because I don't have the time and the money to go spend $100 on regular beer. I eventually I will, but as of right now, it's just too difficult to go pick stuff out. If I lived closer to Nightly, I'd probably spend way too much money. The money I don't really have.
Yeah,
well, I think it's almost like a
blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it's a blessing to not be as close to the bottle shop as I wish I was, but
yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Because if I could, I'd walk across the street to it probably every other day.
So, being that for our beer review, that's our beer intro for this week. If you see the picture that I posted this week and you're like, what the hell is that? Well, that's what I was drinking last time. So let's just get
I'm not opposed to light beer, man.
Light beer, there's nothing wrong with the good.
When you just want to watch a game or record a podcast and just drink a little bit of something that isn't quite water, just really close to it, and water that gets you fucked up if you have too many of them.
Yeah, right. 13, 14,
light
20.
Beers, you really can't go wrong with light beer, but hey, I mean, I'm not that much of an alcoholic where I can drink a 30-pack and not feel it, but
no,
you can definitely drink a few of them, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, you can put them down. So let's just get into our quote unquote main segment, because there's a couple different topics that we can discuss, because these are fairly recent rumors. I believe they originated through Horror Night Nightmares Discord page. They started planting clues into their Discord page, and I don't remember exactly the clues or who solved it and whatnot, but I was reading through all the different texts, and man, Discords are fun, but I personally just don't have the time to keep up, and I'm the one person that, like, if I miss something, I will have to scroll all the way up, even if it's just nonsensical chat. I still have to read it all, so I
utilize
with Discords
for my like news, because like
yeah,
I don't. That's me with basically every social media. I don't use Twitter. I don't use Instagram. I don't use Facebook. I mean, I have an Instagram, but I don't typically follow the soundbite stuff. So if it's on a
Yep.
Discord channel, I ain't ever gonna see it.
Yeah,
I
no,
follow a
it's
couple of the other podcasts, but other than that, I don't really use Discord for anything. So a lot of these news or these rumor podcast episodes that we do, I just come on here blind and I go, you say what happened and I'll react to it because that's basically what it is.
It's tough, and I even don't. I won't notice it until other people point it out because I just
Right.
don't. I'm in Discord servers
have
and every
other
now and then
things
I'll
to do.
peek in there, but it's just another
I just
time
don't-
waster that I don't have the time for.
Yeah, I don't live
For
on
me.
my phone. I know a lot of people do, and it's fine. Like, trust me, I'm married to someone that lives on their phone.
Yeah.
But I don't typically. I'm not on it enough. Like, I have one, obviously, but like it's one of those things where I have other things that I have to that I worry about, things that I enjoy doing that I just don't have the time to keep up with Twitter and keep up with all these other things. So yeah, like you, I'll just kind of follow along with the crowd, and when some people drop something and other people are talking about it, I'll add my 2 cents. But I'm not the first person to read the news story when it drops. I have to say though, like I feel like it used to be when we first started doing this, started talking about this stuff, and you kind of were getting pretty big into it, with the Horror Night Nightmares guys. It's almost feeling like they have to almost know something ahead of time. I used to think it was like, they would get their hands on material and maybe like come up with opinions and speculation, like real speculation. But if they're dropping clues to things, it's almost like they know something. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, they have like the rumors and stuff like that, and I think for more fun, they leave clues to the rumors. So even though they're putting clues out there, it's clues to strictly what they're possibly hearing or their speculation.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. I'm too old to like play the scavenger hunt bullshit. So like, just tell me like what the rumor is. That's all. I mean, I'm not gonna go.
I'm not smart enough to figure them out either.
This is why I leave that to the smart people in the community, the ones that actually know what they're doing and know what to look for. Like, you figure out the clue, you tell me what it is, and then I'll react to it. But like, I just don't have time to think about it.
It's like a mini
Unless it's like
virtual escape room.
Yeah, I guess so. I would never be able to do oh my god, I'd be so bad at those. I'd be that person that sits in the middle of the room and goes, "This is stupid," and not really help.
So yeah, I am curious how they get their information, and honestly though, that's a kind of good segue, because one of the recent rumors is that I believe on the version 1 speculation map there was an anchor. Now I think it's come out now that anchor was strictly put there to hear speculation on what it could be, because like we talked about on that episode, it's not fun if they know for fact what 10 houses are coming. It's just not as fun putting them all out there.
Right.
There is no speculation season at that point.
And that stands.
So that one was just kind of put out there, like, just to hear people's discourse on it. So what I believe now is that they're saying that, that house could possibly be coming from Invasion, which is one of the original scare zones at 27. Now, not to toot my own horn, but beep beep. On our episode back in October, which I have queued up, as if you did not listen to it then, you can listen to a little bit of it now. Now, this was November 11th on our way too early 32 predictions. Now, and why I think this is a good segue is because I'm sure that they do get some information somewhere, but as we've noticed in the past, when we first started this, we were just blind. But now we're starting to see patterns, and I'm looking in depth for patterns on why were certain houses here, when were they here last, was it a zone, what we know what to look for. IPs, are they on an anniversary, do they have a previous connection, what's coming out this year that seems to fit the model. So I do think a lot of it could be like just good guessing, I guess. They might have some like sprinkles of information, but I mean, we are ourselves in the past couple of years, we've got a couple on our way too early predictions, which at the time we do as like a joke essentially, because it's just ridiculously too early to speculate what's coming the next year. But
we've talked about it before though too, that obviously speculating is, it's fun because you can kind of just throw ideas at the wall and see what people would enjoy versus what would be silly and not well received. But I
Yeah.
think there's also things you can see um, pattern wise between year after year, kind of what becomes a house, what doesn't become a house, the trends that they follow to kind of not necessarily know what's going to happen, but at least make educated guesses. Like nothing we bring up is like completely out of the realm of possibility. So a lot of the things we talk about, I think we try to keep it somewhat grounded in reality and, based on what we've seen in the past and, what they've done year in and year out to kind of make those, way too early predictions. So
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of the reason why, we tend to get things somewhat right anyways. I mean, not just us, obviously others in the
Yeah.
community
No.
too do the same thing, but not to say we're the first person to call something, but it is kind of
No.
cool
No.
that like
No. But it is
when you
nice
do
to
get
pat ourselves on the
something,
back every now and then.
and granted, we don't know yet because we don't
And
truly
again,
know
yeah,
anything for sure, but if that's
still a
really
rumor.
going
So
to
I want to take
happen,
my victor. I want to take my victory lap before it gets
yeah,
debunked.
don't take
Because
it,
as of
don't
right
take it,
now,
don't take it too early, but
yeah.
you might be right.
But so let's just, I'm going to play back the clip just so that way I already worded it in this clip as to how and why I came to this, a guess essentially. Stretching here. So I was trying to find some sort of trend. So this year at 31, we got Dead Man's Pier. Dead Man's Wharf was the scare zone at 26. So 5 years, a 5-year gap. Mm-hmm. If we go back to last year, we had Wicked Growth at 30. Yep. And then we had a scare zone, Evil Roots, in Central Park at 25. A 5-year gap. So, and if Wicked Growth and Evil Roots didn't kind of line up enough for you for 30, we had HHN Icons at 30, and then we had a scare zone of HHN Icons at 25 as well. So another 5-year gap. So for 32, I started looking at the scare zones of 27 that were originals. Mm-hmm. Now the two that stuck out is one is Invasion, which is like that sci-fi alien who was also in the Eddie's Revenge scare zone. So that's kind of how I worked my head into thinking maybe this could be a possibility because, like I said, we look for trends, and that just happened to be a recent trend of mine. Now, the other one that I mentioned was Festival of the Deadliest, I think it is, or the Deadlies. So either one, like you said, we were just throwing ideas. There's a lot of ideas in that episode, which probably are not going to be true, and this one might not be either. But interesting that this one is being talked about because if it does come, it does seem like, I mean, I'd be all up for it. A fun, if they did it as more, I think, goofy because it's just so ridiculous. These big aliens with like silver cloaks on. It just seems like it could be a good campy style house. Just super, super like 50s sci-fi or 60s sci-fi and just really go into the colors of it, the bright purples, the lights, the crash scenes. I'd be interested in something like that. Is that something that sort of sparks your interest as well, or could you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said it before. I would love to see something sci-fi, something alien related, because I don't think I've seen anything related to that yet.
Yeah, no.
Granted,
just
I've only been going for so long, but
yeah, the aliens did make a little cameo in Hellblock Horror, but that's just that has nothing to do with it, really. Yeah, but I mean, that's a nothing. That's a throwaway, essentially. It's not a house for them. It's not a sci-fi house, but I'd be interested to see how this comes about. There was really not a storyline. Scare zones are very hard to tell a storyline. It's really just set pieces. So I'd be interested to see what they decide to flesh out as the story. Is it going to be just as basic as an alien invasion's coming? They crash landed, or they're coming to abduct people and test on them. Would one of the rooms be like inside of their spaceship? Would it be a landing
be cool.
site? I think it could be very, very interesting. It'd be fun. I'd like to have like the finale scene, like where you're walking into a big ship, almost like how we had Bugs, where you have that big bug at the end and you like kind of walk under it, if you had just an actual like space saucer and you kind of walk up a ramp, not really up a ramp, but it looks like it's a ramp leading into the entrance of the ship, and we can kind of see their technology and stuff like that. I'm definitely in on a little invasion house for multiple reasons. One, I like being right, and two, I just want that that hokey, ridiculous, feel good sci-fi. Not necessarily scary. Obviously, with boo holes, there's always going to be a little bit of a scare there, but for the most part, I think the overall essence of it would just be, goofy sci-fi. Those weird like sounds and the weird little laser guns, and I'm in on it. I think it would be fun. Is it going to be my like most hyped thing? I can't say I was like a super fan of the Scare Zone. I did get to see that one, so it is cool now that it's been multiple years that I'm starting to see older properties being repackaged or, called up to the big leagues, I guess. If you're talking Scare Zone to house treatment, that's a pretty good nod, and they obviously feel that there's some success there.
Now, I think you said bugs, and that's kind of like right where I would want it. Is I want that campy 50s style aliens. I don't particularly think that it'd be wild to have like more like a serious take on it, almost like Alien. That'd be cool too, but I'd almost rather an alien house, like based on the property, not necessarily like their own like alien story. Like if you're gonna give me like an alien story, give me like bugs. Now, granted, I don't know what the invasion house or Scare Zone looked like back in the day. I wasn't there for it, so I don't know what that was all about. So I could be way off base here and say, I want it to be this campy 50s nuclear family type thing, when in reality it's something more serious. And I'd be okay with either at the end of the day.
Yeah,
but I do like I like the idea of little green men and aliens coming down and abducting people and abducting livestock and stuff like that. So I'm cool with it. That's what it comes to.
The Scare Zone was based on the 50s, and their goal was to conduct experiments upon you, and they wanted to prepare to invade Earth. So maybe they carry that storyline on, and it's, in the 50s they did they came down, they conducted their experiments, and now it's time to invade Earth. So who knows? Yeah, they're very, very gimmicky looking, very big purple heads, white gowns. It's pretty cool. It was a fun zone. Some cool set pieces. You had the big military trucks. You had a saucer crash landed in the middle of the Scare Zone with some like debris around it, and it was cool. I'd be interested to see this resurface as a house. Now, the more fun rumor, which is something that we discussed on an episode. I believe we did a whole episode devoted to, possible ways to, what's the next stage for Horror Nights, because, they're going to expand something at some point. You'd assume they'd have to. I mean, they have continuously over the course of the event added stuff. They didn't start with 10 houses. It's been a ride. They've added houses over the years. They've added zones. They've moved houses. There's a lot of locations. So they've made adjustments, and we talked about the crowds. It's obviously getting popular, more popular than I think it has in the last 5 to 10 years. It's probably gone up tremendously. That is, goes hand in hand with those big IPs that they've gotten in the last 5 years. The Stranger Things, The Weekend. I'm sure that brought a lot of people to the event that otherwise didn't really know what it was or had no reason to necessarily go. But now that they're seeing these different, reaches out into various media and pop culture icons, it's bringing in a new crowd, more crowd. So I don't know if it's necessarily time that it's going to happen, but we talked about possibly an 11th house. And now that is also a rumor that they're not saying a 11th house is coming. Obviously a rumor's a rumor, but they're saying that the possibility for an 11th house is on the table right now. So maybe they're in that early stage of deciding, hey, is this the year that we, pull the trigger on adding another house to spread out some of the crowd? Is it, is it time? Do you think that this year in particular is the year that we are going to get that 11th house?
If you were to ask me, do you think they'll do it this year? I do think that it's possible. I don't think it again helps a ton with the crowd sizes. I don't think one extra house is really going to drop all the other houses' wait times considerably. It'll help a little bit. Obviously, it has to by definition. But I mean, unless it's like, because I mean, honestly, whatever the biggest IP draw, will always have the longest wait. But I think they've also kind of been prepping the space for it, because if you notice, like we said last year, we've been talking about it last year, they had a house right up front, up by the first scare zone when you first come in, and they didn't have a house behind Fear Factor or behind MIB, however you want to refer to the area.
Yep,
they didn't have one back there last year, and we all thought it was because they were planning on pulling the stage down and putting the stage there, but they didn't pull the stage down. So I'm wondering if maybe they were prepping the space to say, all right, well, we can definitely fit another house in here if we wanted to. Now that we know we have the space, maybe we can build one. Maybe the plan was to potentially do it last year and they didn't do it. Because, with Evil Dead falling through, maybe they were like,
scramble.
All right, we had to scramble, put one together. We don't have time to put together an 11th house. So this year they might have a couple extra ideas that they're thinking about or mulling around in their head. Because I don't think doing one extra house is really going to add that much effort. It's just one additional house. Now, if we were talking like doing another like 2, like bumping it from 10 to 12, I could see that it being a little bit more hard to difficult to pull off. But I think one extra house isn't really going to do much, and they definitely have the area for it. So I won't go on a limb and say it's definitely going to happen, but I could totally see them adding an 11th. The number kind of just throws me off a little bit because a 10 is a nice even number. 11's weird, but that's just my own, it's because for me, I look at a map and I look and there's 10, boom, 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 boom. And it's just it's easy. You can fit everything in a nice symmetrical way, but with 11 houses, the number just throws me off for some reason. But hey, that's just me.
What if the 11th house is Stranger Things?
Well, I mean, again, I don't really think it being
11?
anything in particular would I mean, okay, so I see it. Yeah, all right, I'm stupid. See, I told you this is why I can't do clues, because I'm too dumb. I lose. I don't catch things immediately. Yes, that's funny. That would make sense, but I mean, I still think. I mean, I definitely think that we can't count Stranger Things out in general. I don't think that we can sit here and say for sure that they won't eventually. They won't necessarily not do a Stranger Things house. We haven't really gotten any indication that there's going to be, but we are going to talk about the spec map for Hollywood, and there is something that carries forward onto this map that does from the last map. And as you and I spoke about it last week, was it last week? It was last week.
Yeah. Yep.
And you brought up a good point about one of the icons or one of the logos on this map, how it would fit with Stranger Things. So who knows? I mean, there's a very good chance that it could happen, but I don't know. I feel like if there was going to be the 11th house, to play devil's advocate, if I thought there was going to be an 11th house this year, I would assume that Nightmares would put 11 on their spec map, right? I mean,
yeah,
unless they truly are just hiding it. But I feel like they tend to know a little bit more than they let on. And I think that if there was really an 11th house, that'd be kind of an announcement that would have already made, if not dropped hints about. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they're just keeping it super under wraps, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I don't know if it would necessarily happen this year. I think a lot of the permits have already come out for the house modifications. I think all 10 locations have been released, because all of that, the permits and stuff are public information, which you can just find through like the government sites. So if there were an 11th house, we'd have to see a permit pop up pretty quickly, unless, and I'm not sure how the permits and the legality of stuff works, but if they have a permit already for all the modifications to the new Minions ride, if they would have to redo a permit to modify that half for that house, what used to be the Shrek Theater house, because that half is still there. From what I've heard, is that it's still there. It's still a possible house location in the future, maybe. But if they don't have to release a permit or obtain a new one for that, maybe it's kind of hiding in plain sight already. I'm not entirely sure. I would think crazy. That, yeah, I would. I mean, this is a long call, but I would assume that by the fall of 25, they're gonna want to add an additional house to try to lessen the blow of Epic, to kind of spread people out, because once it opens in summer of 25, obviously you want to pack it, but you have to still be able to function. So if they added an additional house at that point at 25 to draw people back to studios as well as Epic, or maybe entice people that are visiting Epic for that first couple months, and then trying to pull them to Horror Nights as well, because maybe it's, just park goers that want to go to Nintendo World. And they're like, oh, well, we planned our trip for the fall. They're adding more stuff over to Horror Nights. We might as well just grab a ticket for that as well. So I could see getting up in house numbers at least by 25. Now, this year, I mean, who knows? I don't know the significance is there to add it for this year. If it came on 30 for the anniversary, or 31 for the whole Halloween aspect, I could see it. But 32 just seems like a weird, odd time to just decide this is the year we need it. Maybe they've seen the increase in, I wish I had the numbers for like tickets and how much percentage wise it's increased over the last couple of years. Maybe it has increased a lot and we just don't know. And we just, we go by feel, we don't look at analytical numbers. We just go by the feel of things. And obviously busy nights are busy nights. Slow nights seem to be easier and more accessible, but maybe it's just becoming more consistently congested. And they said, this might be the year that we pull the trigger. And if it's worth it money wise, then yeah, because we talked after one of our Unmasking the Horror tours, and it costs, I think they said, around like $1 million essentially for a house to overall create one.
It's a good starting point. Yeah. I mean, they said I know that they said that Descendants cost over $1 million. So they definitely, depending on the amount of work and build quality that goes into each one of these houses, they all can be upwards of 7 figures. So
yeah, so that's a big decision. So maybe that's why the rumor of it. Yeah, and the rumor essentially said that it's on the table. It's a possibility. So maybe they are chalking the idea down around, and maybe a big factor of that is 100% locking down these houses for sure, like these IPs. So that way we don't get what happened last year where, oh, sorry, the movie got delayed. You have to redo that house. They essentially did 11 houses last year, but we only saw 10 because one had to go. I don't know exactly how far it got in progress, but you don't want to say we're going to add an 11th house if there's any sort of risk of losing one and having to really scramble to put together another house on top of introducing an 11th one. So maybe there's just more serious conversations with those IP holders that, like, hey, you are 100% locked in. This movie is coming out. We can't scrap this because we're trying to spearhead a whole another house as well. So maybe that's where the possibility is. Maybe from what they've heard, there's more, I don't want to say stern, but like direct, open communication about, we cannot have this house drop because they've dealt with it the last couple of years.
They'd have to ensure that it's an IP that they know is already a thing. I mean, unfortunately, you can't. I mean, they have no control over whether a studio pushes back release of a movie or a TV show. Like they can't control that. So,
No, no.
I mean, yeah, I think that
They just want the assurance, like this is
they'd have
like
to.
you're putting it
Well,
out, right? Like this is not. Yep, it's in the can. It's all good to go.
right. I also think that if it was planned for an 11th house, if they couldn't do it, then it's not a huge loss because they still have 10 houses ready to go. It's just, hey, our 11th didn't work out. It is what it is. That's why I'm thinking if potentially if it was going to happen, it may have happened last year. And that's why we only got, we didn't get a house behind the MIB place because that was supposed to be one, but then it fell through, or they, maybe they were going to put one there, but then they decided to put a different one up front because, it was just easier. They could build it.
Or if like Hellblock was always on, Hellblock was kind of thrown together, I believe, but just playing off the idea of maybe that was still sort of a house that because Evil Dead dropped, they just scrapped that other location, threw it up there. I mean, they didn't have the permits, I don't think, for the 11 houses last year. I have no idea, but
I mean, it
it
didn't
could have
really
been something
feel
along
like,
those lines.
I mean, outside of the characters in the house, it didn't feel like it was thrown together. Like
No.
I mean, all the sets, that looked like a lot of work went into building those sets. Yeah, they were kind of bland, but like it still required time to put those together. And then they just threw random characters in it. So maybe that was the sets were built for Evil Dead, but then they had to just kind of redesign it or redecorate it to fit the cell block stuff, or the hell block stuff. But I don't know. I if you're asking my opinion, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to get 11 houses this year. I think it's a cool rumor, and maybe something for the future, like you said, when it gets closer to the new park opening. But as of right now, I don't personally think they're going to see 11. We're going to see 11 houses this year or next year.
Yeah,
but who knows? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same boat too, because I do feel like if these discussions of a possible 11th house came out in November or something like that, then maybe a little bit more credence to it. But I do think that the fact that this is even a possibility is interesting. I do think that at least it's being discussed in some capacity. So it will happen at some point. It's not going to just stay at 10 forever. It didn't stay at 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, whatever. It always grew, and it is going to grow at some point. I think I'm on the same boat as you. I don't know if it's this year, but the fact that it's being talked about is cool because that means I think at least within the next couple of years, it will happen at some point.
I mean, I have to imagine it's something that they've been talking about for years now. It's not something that's like brand new on the drawing board now. I feel like it's something that they've been talking about for the last few years. I just, again, with the number thing, I almost feel like if they're going to expand, they'd almost expand by 2 and give us 12. Yeah. But I guess who knows? We'll see. I mean, a lot of it comes down to the manpower and having the manpower to not only build all this stuff, but also, man it on, Horror Night nights. We've talked about that last week. It's like how difficult is it going to be to hire enough staff to manage, an additional couple of houses or an additional house. So I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, again, not to reiterate the same thing I just said, but I think at this point I'm not 100% sold that it's going to happen. But it's nice to know that if it is being talked about, that it is being talked about, because I mean, no one's ever going to say no to more things to do. You know what I mean?
No, it's, and like we said, it is going to have to happen at some point, but is that some point right now? I don't necessarily know if it is or not. So let's jump in now to this speculation map for Hollywood. Now, it's something that we don't really discuss too much. We don't really go into Hollywood as well. I don't know the history as much of the Hollywood event. I'm still learning stuff about the event in Orlando as well. There's a lot of history. So let's just kind of look at this Hollywood map. I'm just going to pull it up real quick.
And we don't know the theme park very well either. So like not really knowing where things are or what it's around. Knowing where like these locations are, it's kind of, it's not always
It is, yeah.
easy to kind of pinpoint how it's going to be set up, and like it's not something we're used to. Now, it's something I'd like to get to at some point, but as of right
Yeah,
now,
and location wise, we are not the best, so we're just going to strictly talk about the houses and the amount of houses. So interesting enough, and I guess we can kind of include the last conversation into this. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They are proposing 9 houses out there, which is an increase from 8.
but
So they
also
are
have
getting an additional house.
right. They're getting an additional house, but they have the tram, which they always have. So
Correct. Yeah. So last year they had the tram with 8 houses. So this year they have 9 with 1 tram. So is it the year that both of them are getting, maybe if they're confident that Hollywood's getting one, maybe it's on the table that they said overall this event coast to coast is big enough. Let's fund another house for each one.
But it goes back to my point where this is on their spec map. There was no 11th house
Ours
on
wasn't.
the spec map for Orlando. So I
So
think
I
if
guess
we were
that'll
going to
be
get one, we would know about it.
Yeah.
I don't
So
want to
I
poo-poo
guess
the idea because, like, I understand why everybody be excited about it, but I don't think we can really necessarily correlate the two because they just now have 9 houses plus a 10th like other attraction. So we all have 10 attractions. And I feel like that if we were going to get another one, Nightmares would have put something on the spec map in some capacity to let us like kind of talk about. So
spec map 2.
Again,
We'll see what's going on with that one.
I guess we'll find out in another one, right?
Yeah. So we'll start at the top, and that is the Horrors of Blumhouse, Megan, and Insidious. So, and we might as well just throw the next one in there too, The Last of Us. So it seems like we're going to split those IPs with both coasts. That's not really a surprise. Sense. Yeah, I mean, those seem to be the two. Well, okay. Well, there's another one on there, but we'll just put those two together for right now.
Well, the
so
third
those
one's
seem
a
to
little
be
different.
Yeah. So those two seem to be. I mean, Blumhouse, I would say is a for sure. The Last of Us, I'd probably put it at like a 90 percent sure. It seems like there's no reason to doubt that one. So I'll be curious to see how those play out over there. Now, I'm not sure if this Blumhouse location is like ours, where it has that direct split, with our Fast and Furious queue. I think that adds to that house for me by breaking up the two.
That it does.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how they break it up over there, but interesting enough that they're both going to be there. So next up is Universal Studios Monsters Paris. So a slight change from the one that we are supposedly getting.
We getting the Hunchback.
Yeah. Well, it says we're going to get, hopefully. I mean, the rumors right now is Phantom and
Paris,
Dracula.
Right? Well, yeah,
so,
I know that, but like.
Oh, for Paris. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just talking like it's called Monsters Paris.
Yeah. Now, is that something is that more Hunchback themed? I'm not too well versed in the monster.
Well, all I know is that I'm pretty sure the Hunchback of Notre Dame is based in Paris, right? Notre Dame is Paris.
Oh,
or am I mixing my cities?
No, I think you're. Yeah, I think
I may be mixing. Let me double check. I may be mixing things up. But no, it's it's in Paris. Yeah, Notre Dame's in Paris. That's what I thought. Okay, so yeah, I mean that would make sense to me, right? Now, this excites me more than the ones that we get, and I'm sorry, monstrous people, but this is just my opinion. Stop mixing them up with random monsters. Just give me one monster.
Yeah,
because it gives that monster more room to breathe. There's more you can explore. You can expand upon their story more. You don't need to do this weird mashup versus crap. We have enough of it in Hollywood for that. We don't like in Hollywood. I mean, like movies. We have enough movies of these monster mashup shit. Like this is actually sounds really cool to me. Now it's at what they call a Parisian courtyard, so there must be something at the theme park that's like Paris based, which makes sense thematically. But yeah, that's actually kind of exciting. So my guess would be that this would mean Hunchback of Notre Dame, or sorry, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
You know what is really cool is now I can't remember the dates for Horror Nights in Hollywood, but the release date of The Hunchback of Notre Dame is September 2nd, 1923.
Well,
So
it
they
just
could
lines
have
itself
opening
up.
night. They could have opening night of Horror Nights be the exact 100th year since that
Anniversary of
movie
the
came
movie.
out. So I mean,
See, why can't we
ours,
get that then?
we're guessing, this September 2nd is a Saturday and the 1st is right there. But, if they kick off Horror Nights on September 1st and we or both have Hunchback, I mean, 100 years is a pretty big anniversary. Whether he's the most well-known monster or not, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it's a big anniversary. Now, if Spec Map 2 for Orlando comes out and it's got this on it, I can promise you right now I'll be a lot more excited about the map than I am right now. And I know I'm not.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Would you be more excited if it was Phantom and Hunchback or Phantom and Dracula?
If it had to be one of those two,
For us, yeah.
I'd be more excited for Hunchback versus. I keep saying versus, but Hunchback and Phantom. That would be more exciting.
Me too. Yeah, I would
seen
enjoy that. I
Dracula.
think the aesthetics work better.
Yeah, they do. I think the characters are more closely related. They're not the same story, and they're from different cities. But if we have to get a mashup house, like if it has to happen, I'd rather that one. Now, I'd rather one or the other, but that's just me. But this actually sounds really cool, and you bringing up the anniversary of the movie makes it even better. It just makes it sound so much cooler because it's like, oh, we're actually lining this up to 100 years from the day that we released the movie. I think that's crazy. That's a really cool idea, but I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I'm more excited about this monster's house than the one that's currently on our spec map. So
yeah. So next up, they have the Japanese Sybils as well. So seemingly an original. Now, I'm not sure how often we share originals the same year. I'm not sure if the stories will line up. I'm sure they're doing a basis. This is the basic story. This is the basic feel of the house. These are what we're thinking. What are you thinking? Okay, kind of do your. I think they'll be similar but different. I don't think it would be an exact replica. We've seen some of our houses at Orlando make their way over to Hollywood in recent years, last year being Scarecrow the Reaping, which took the exact title. So I'm curious, obviously there's some subtle changes, but the overall feel is essentially the same. So I'm assuming that this would get that same treatment of, whatever this ends up being, it has a similar feel to it.
I mean, it could very well kind of follow the same route of, we get part of the story and then they get another part of the story.
Yeah.
But, or it could just be a carbon copy.
Mm-hmm. So, and that brings us, interestingly enough, to the next one, which was a previous Orlando original from Horror Nights 21, and that's Nightingale's Blood Prey, which we've talked about it at some points. Neither one of us had got to visit this one, but this one is essentially just like a World War I trench style house with the Nightingales, and they're these creatures that have existed.
Yeah, I'm bummed that I never got to do this because it sounds so cool. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's just the Nightingale creature in the World War I era trenches, which is just a fun time period to throw these creatures in. It's so contrasting. You think back then in that time and how you'd actually combat these creatures. So just from the pictures and videos I saw of that house, it seemed really fun. So it is cool that seemingly some of our stuff is making their way over there. We did have very early on, I think last year, speculation that we were going to get one of Hollywood's original style houses with, I believe it was Pandora's Box or something along those lines. I'd be interested to see how we could adapt one of theirs. I'd be interested to walk through some of those because, like I said, neither of us have been out to Hollywood. I don't know if it's necessarily on the docket for either of us. Maybe at some point, but
maybe
it's just it is tough for us to get out there. So I'd like to see one of their originals make its way over to us at some point.
Agreed.
Now, next up on their map is The Exorcist, which we talked about previously, I think before we started, was, man, that's a really good get. Like that's exciting. And it might be exciting for us. You know, we it's been a little bit since we've had The Exorcist, but for them, they got it in 2016 and 2021. Now, I know why they would go back to that. There is a new Exorcist movie coming out, I believe, in the fall. I think Blumhouse is doing that one as well. And much like how we had the original Halloween before that last third movie came out, just the name alone will draw attraction to it. It doesn't have to be from the new movie, but just the name The Exorcist coming out, it's going to draw people to that new movie. But it's also, I believe, the 50th anniversary of The Exorcist being released, the original.
Oh shit! Really? Yeah,
I think it was 73.
73. Let me double check on that one.
Yeah, so that makes sense too. I think we
1973.
mentioned that as well in our way too early predictions because, like I said, we look for patterns, you know, and we look for anniversaries, and that is one of those anniversaries that would be strolling around in
Makes a lot of
2023.
sense. I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if that found its way over here too on the next spec map. So, I mean, didn't the Halloween 3 rumors kind of start in Hollywood and kind of work their way over here? And then obviously it wasn't a house, but you know, I could totally see that like maybe The Exorcist could be something that pops up over on this coast. Yeah,
and we had it at 26. So in 2016 we had The Exorcist, which I went through that one. Yeah. It was really fun. And I think that would fit the mold of, you know, that big horror name. You know, we have Chucky already announced. So that's like a pretty big, you know, horror-ish name. It doesn't really necessarily tickle my fancy as much as others, but it's a notable name, a notable character. And I think The Exorcist is right up there as well with one of those, you know, big
it's also
horror
a
names
too.
Yeah. No, it's a staple. You know, we talked about that previously. It doesn't have to be a slasher to have that horror notoriety. You know, The Exorcist fits that void as well. Now, the next little one is a little picture of a clown. Looks like a little hobo clown. So over there, their icon, they do have an icon, and his name is Hollywood Harry. And he is also a little clown. Not as similar as Jack. His design is actually really cool. He's got, you know, the bald, he's got like the Hulk Hogan hair, where he's got the long hair and the donut hole on top. But he's got blue hair, little red jacket, blue pants that are all tattered. He's got a knife, black balloons. So pretty cool looking work. I don't, like we said earlier, we don't know the history of HHN Hollywood as much. But Hollywood Harry is kind of their Jack. It's their mainstay icon. Pops up in random houses throughout the years. He was on the Terror Tram in 2016. He had Dread Time Stories in 2018. He was back at the Terror Tram in 22. So maybe this is their time that they give him the full house. You know, it would be cool to see. This is a pretty cool lineup. If this was the lineup, you know, there's a couple varying things, so that would be tempting to pull me over there because I would like to see, you know, that Hollywood Harry house. If The Exorcist doesn't come to us and it goes to them, that'd be interesting. If the monsters are varied, it would be fun to see that. You know, Nightingale's Blood Prey, it would be fun to see. I know it's not our rendition, but it would be fun to see a rendition of that. So far, an interesting map. Next up is Chucky, which, again, another shared thing between the coasts. I believe that one was in the announcement as well. So that's not necessarily news, but worth hitting on. And then the last house. Now, this is the interesting one. It is the same little logo that we had on our map, which is the guitar and the lightning bolt. So this is one of the biggest things that I'm curious to see what happens on version 2. Because people can tell me Netflix and Stranger Things are out of conversation until their face is blue, but until I see it, I
I don't think it's out
don't
of conversation.
necessarily believe it.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. I mean, I know that it's the series came out last year, or the season came out last year, but I mean, when are they releasing the part 2? Is it next year or is it this year?
So season 5 is filming. They start filming in May, so it's not going to release
Right. It
until
won't be this year. It'll be next year.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
could
they
see.
might release the season this year, but like they won't have they don't necessarily have the. Well, let's put it this way: it's not out of conversation. It's still very popular. People still like
Mhm.
Stranger Things. I can tell because I follow Millie Bobby Brown on Instagram, and she's got a million followers, a few
Yeah.
million followers. She's popular. They're popular. The characters are popular. The show is still popular. So that's a silly argument to say that, like, well, no one's talking about Stranger Things anymore. It's like, come on now.
Yeah.
Tell me right now.
I'm sure
Don't
sure
sit here.
that's
Yeah,
always a conversation.
I mean, please. Metallica is like suddenly popular again because of that TV show. Like it's not
Yeah.
out of conversation. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Stranger Things could still pop up here. And when you brought up that when we talked about this the other spec map, it really did kind of click in my brain. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. I still think that I'm on the side of this is another musical guest, but I could see why it would make sense that this is actually in relation to Stranger Things season 4 because of the guitar and
Mhm.
the lightning.
Yeah.
It almost fits too perfectly, which is why I kind of take it both ways and not really sure what I'm sure of yet, if that makes any
Yeah. All
sense.
right.
I think I'm more sure of it being a musical artist, but I'm not 100% ready to say definitely because I think Stranger Things just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And they would want to hold on to
If
that,
that does
right?
pop up, what was that?
I mean, they would want to hold on to that and like not necessarily drop information that would give that away right away, because that would be your
Yeah.
big like boom, like hey, guess what we have coming back, and I think everybody would be really excited for it because there's a lot more to work with this last season than there
Mhm.
was probably in 2 and 3. So I don't know, I feel like that to just sit here and discount it completely and say it's not going to happen because nobody cares about it or talks about it anymore is such a silly argument. But I don't know. I hope people aren't making that argument online.
No,
But
no,
then
it's not
again,
that. I
you
think
never
it's
know.
just I think people look at stuff the same way we do with patterns. We're all musical artists, monsters, Blumhouse, stuff like that, and
Oh
the
no, yeah,
fact
I
that
see why that would be the
there
case.
was yeah, I think the fact that there was 3 in a row Netflix properties and then none, I think people just took that as not necessarily
They were
the
done.
ties are severed, but maybe they're pumping the brakes a little bit. But I think a year off is enough. I think that this is still arguably, if you put Stranger Things on here, I would say it's arguably the biggest IP. I think it would take over Last of Us. I think it would take over Chucky. It would definitely take over Blumhouse for me. And I think they learned their lesson. I don't know if I don't think they'd wait till season 5 to come out and do like a 4 and 5 house. It just seemed to be a little bit too crazy. Now, obviously, 2 and 3 seasons were very different, and 4 and 5 seem to be lined up like they're going to be the same villain. It's going to be Vecna again. But I think that
Same
this
villain, but different
season 4
setting.
was, yeah, I think season 4 has the most stuff to work with as far as a house.
Correct. I agree. I
So,
think that
and it's
the
just
settings are a lot easier to translate to a house from
Mhm.
season 4 because season 5 is going to be very like broad
in
scale
Hawkins.
battle in Hawkins. Right. Exactly. So I mean, you can make it work, but I think it being on Earth and not really having not really having that comparative like the upside down
Upside
plus
down.
what's going on Earth, like the Earth plane. I think there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can kind of just do what you did before and go scene to scene and you know show a scene at like the Russian prison and then show scenes here and there and wherever else they go in the show. And then Vecna just makes so much sense to bring into the real world and show that costume work because he's going to be an excellent costume
Yeah.
anyways. But well, I guess we'll see what happens.
If this was so say there is no season 5, this was the last season, hypothetically. It's not happening, obviously. And we waited like 3 years after the fact. I still think if you put Stranger Things on that map, it would still be the most
I
popular
think it's
thing.
still popular. Mm-hmm.
It
100%.
has so
I mean,
much
there's a reason
lasting power.
That's why they can put 77 Michael Myers on there and people still lose their minds.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like it's culturally powerful enough now where people aren't going to forget about it. It's just
Yes,
it carved out its own space in the zeitgeist that people are just aren't going to just willingly forget about that show in any way. I think that I don't think Stranger Things is completely done. I wouldn't be surprised if we get eventually down the road like a reunion type show where the kids come back but they're a lot older as like adults, almost like type thing.
Yeah, they're going to be doing. I mean, I know we're getting a little off topic, but they are doing. I think season 5 is going to wrap up this story of this group, but they have said, the Duffer Brothers said, that they are continuing the Stranger Things world because there's so many stories to tell. So it could be upside downs or similar friend groups in different eras in maybe the past, maybe the future. So they're going to continue the world of Stranger Things, just not necessarily the seasons 1 through 5 characters that we've seen. So it's clearly going to be a long stay, kind of like a Star Wars, where it's just, you have your episodes 1 through 3, and then you have the new prequels and the sequels and all these spin-offs that are just in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it just makes too much sense for me as far as name power. But lastly, on this Hollywood map is the Terror Tram celebrities. I have no idea. I have no reference as to what that is. Is it?
Well, we've never done a Terror Tram before, so I'm not really sure how that works. I mean, I'm assuming it's kind of just like a haunted hayride, but on a tram.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
so
my
the
guess
celebrities
would be.
aspect
I've never
to me,
really.
I have no idea what the celebrities aspect
I
is.
don't think obviously you can tell we don't really know what to say about this one.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never really been a huge fan of hayrides anyways. Like, I think there's a place for them in the industry. I think they work depending on where you do it. But I think they generally work better when it's like a outdoors wooded haunt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it sounds stupid, but like at like a Knott's Berry Farm or a Spooky World, like it makes sense because it's like kind of in, it's out in more, not in the center of a big, massive, like industrialized theme park. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if I'm trying to make it sound the right way.
It doesn't immerse you there.
It doesn't
as much.
And again, I don't want to say like I've been there and done it because I don't know. It could very well be really good, but from what I've been told from people is that the Terror Tram is not that good, and they would rather have a house. But I don't know. That's what I've heard from others that have done it. But I really can't obviously make a final determination until I actually ever go out there and do it. But I still think that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I have a hard time imagining or picturing what a haunted tram ride looks like.
Yeah. So I think that about wraps up our main segment discussions with all the recent rumors and the Hollywood map dropping. So let's just finish off this episode with our horror movie or horror watch of the week. So I have 2 that I sort of have dipped into. I mostly finished Megan. We can have a longer discussion on that for a killer review once we both.
I don't want to
watch that,
but
well, I think it is now streaming on Peacock.
Oh, is it? Okay,
which
maybe I'll watch it. It's free.
Stupidly purchased the movie boat. Yeah, I was an idiot. I pulled the trigger and bought it, and then a week later it came on Peacock. So, egg on my face. I was not super sold on it. It was pretty much exactly what I expected. Yeah. So no surprises there. So we'll have a longer discussion on that. But I also got sucked into a new Netflix documentary, which was the Murdoch Murders, a Southern Scandal, which is pretty interesting.
I watched that. The Murdoch one.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
I did watch that. Yep.
A story that, I mean, recent, but I didn't really know too much about it, but
there's still a trial. Like the trial's still going on. Like you can
yeah.
watch and read up about the trial now as it happens. It's weird. It's a really weird story.
Yeah. So if you're into those like true crime, episodical documentary things, check
we're a
it out.
bunch of pumpkin coffee drinking, fucking like true crime watching bitches. That's what we are.
Yeah.
We are
So
two of the biggest.
I mean, episode 1 I watched and I was like, okay, this is kind of boring. Like I just don't get it. But then
It takes a minute to get into it.
Yeah, because it's set in the story. You know, if you're not familiar with, there was a pretty much this little rich kid with big lawyer dad, lawyer family. His whole family set up the law firm in the town, and they kind of just got away literally with murder. There was an accident, a boating accident, where one of the girls on the boat flew off and drowned and died. And then they started to look deeper into these things, and there's a lot of suspect things that have happened with this family that seemingly just got swept under the rug. So that first episode really is setting the backstory, telling you who these kids are, who this kid is, who the family is. And I was like, okay, I get it. But then there was just so much more. And that's what drew me in at episode 2 or episode 3, whatever it was. But it's definitely an interesting watch. If you're into stuff like that, like, Making a Murderer, The Staircase, stuff like that, this is pretty much in vein with those ones as well. So any other discussions before we hop off for the week?
I've got nothing.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we seem to be in that crazy period where we don't necessarily know when the next discussion's coming, but it seems like stuff keeps coming at us quick and quick. So we will be back next week. We do not have a definitive topic yet. If something pops up, we'll be talking about that. Yeah, if something pops up, we'll be talking about that. Usually our first episode of the month is our killer review, but with these recent rumors, we wanted to address that ahead of time. If we don't get any rumors back, I assume that next week we will be talking possibly about a killer review movie. So until next time, this is Nick.
And this is Shamus.
Happy haunts.
This is cursed. Cursed. It's got a death curse.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.